Being held in response here in council chambers and electronically in accordance with section 238, subsection 3.3 of the Municipal Act and section 16.6.24 of the City of Woodstock Procedure Bylaw. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording will be posted in the city's website following the meeting. The meeting will also be broadcast on Rogers TV. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page of the city's website. Councilors attending virtually will be raising their hands in view of their webcam when moving a motion, requesting to speak, and when a vote is being taken. If a member of council is disconnected or having technical difficulties, we will take a recess in order to attempt to rectify the issue. If technical difficulties exist that prevent the meeting from continuing, the meeting will be adjourned and reconvened at a later time. If a councillor attending virtually needs to leave the meeting at any time, they are requested to inform the clerk. Councillor Tate will be reading the resolutions today. Is there any disclosure of conflict of interest? Councillor Schadenberg.
I, Councillor Mark Schadenberg, of a conflict of interest in Department Report Item 14.F.3. I have a taxi driving license in the City of Woodstock.
Thank you. A disclosure of new business. Matters arising from the minutes. Councillor Tate, you have the motion for the minutes, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Petter, that the minutes of the regular meeting of Woodstock City Council held on June 2nd, 2022 be adopted.
Thank you. The seconder on that. Thank you. Is there any discussion? I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. Councillor Tate, additions to the agenda.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Talbot, that the following items be added to the agenda. Delegation item 8B for the Downtown Woodstock BIA Street Fest. Delegation item 8C, Kendall Cab Company, proposed taxi fare increase. Delegation item 8D, United Woodstock Taxi, proposed taxi fare increase.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Discussion? Thank you. I'll call the motion on that. All in favor? Thank you. Presentations and delegations. Our first delegation that we had on the agenda, Jason Norris, but this delegation was withdrawn. Our next delegation is Chairman Steve McGregor and Vice Chair Melanie Burns on the downtown, on the 2022 Street Fest. Would the two like to come forward?
Through to Acting Chair Lauder. They were unable to attend and they have assigned me the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
possibly the Sunday. Oh, stay tuned. I thought I was awfully quiet. Do you want me to go all over again? No, no. So that's my presentation. I don't know if there are any questions. I don't know whether I can answer them.
Thank you. Are there
Thank
any
you.
questions through to Councillor Talbot?
Good.
Thank you. Our next delegation is Terrence Hurlbut from Kendall Cab Company. Would you like to come forward, please?
Good afternoon. Basically came by today to be available should any questions regarding the requested increase in taxi fares for the city of Woodstock come up. They just ran some numbers. We're all feeling the pain at the gas pumps. 3-month period in 2019, the last year of our increase, for the months of March, April, and May, I paid $43,000 for fuel. This current year, that $43,000 has become $74,000 for the same 3-month period. And I know everyone's been impacted by numerous things, COVID, the supply chain issues, increases of costs in the grocery stores. My drivers are experiencing the same costs that the general public experience. And I really feel the $2 increase, although larger than in a perfect world, I'd be request. I believe it's vital at this time to keep the cab business viable. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions through to Mr. Hurlbut? Councillor Accioni.
Thank you. Through the chair, and just a general question. Curious how many cars you have on the road?
20.
20.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Our next delegation is Mr. Ryan Raycraft of United Woodstock Taxi.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to hear us this afternoon. The requested increase is for a $2 across the zone. And it's mainly due to, as Terry mentioned, the rising fuel costs. The previous increase in 2019 was done in part of anticipation of fuel costs approaching about $1.50 a liter. That's what we kind of had in our mind at that time, where it could hit. And during that time was about $1.35 a liter. In addition, it was to account for the growth rate of Woodstock, which required some rezoning. So we took care of that then, along with some other cost factors, which included maintenance shops increases and minimum wage increases. Currently, we're seeing fuel costs leveling out around $2.10 a liter, although if you got it today, you save about 5 cents. So it's pretty good. Additionally, in 2020, there was a pretty large impact from an insurance perspective, where basically everybody got out of the taxi industry other than facility. That left us with about a 50% increase per vehicle, or about $2,500 to $3,000 roughly a year per vehicle of an increase. So that was absorbed at that time, and certainly during the pandemic, we didn't want to come to you guys for an increase then. As far as how much does fuel costs impact the business, right? So one of the key indicators I look at is fuel costs as a percentage of revenue. And if you use a number like 20%, which is a pretty realistic number, although it's going to vary depending on what you're running, hybrids, small gas 4-cylinder vehicles or vans, it's going to vary, but that's a pretty realistic number. And if you align that to $1.50 a liter, and you're paying a driver at 40%, basically every 10 cents that fuel goes up, you need a 25-cent raise in the tariff to account for a 10-cent increase at the pump. So that's kind of, to give some perspective on how much fuel does impact us. No one wants to raise the rates. We don't, we want to, but we need to run a profitable business, right? Raises in this industry tend to go over like a lead balloon. It's not well received by the public, and we know that. And that's one of the reasons why we held off, like March, there were other cities going for increases. St. Thomas, Stratford, it went for an increase. In Toronto, they increased it. Uber increased their rates. But we're kind of hoping that, the pandemic was pretty much done as far as the restrictions, capacities opened up. And we're hoping gas price would kind of come back to earth. And one other thing that can help quite a bit actually is increased call volume. Because if call volume increases, you can better utilize your cabs so they're not rolling back and forth empty. You can use proximity dispatch, and it really raises the efficiency of the taxis. So, we kind of wanted to just wait and see. And in March, it was great. We had record call volumes, at least for United, that we hadn't seen for the last 2 years. It was about 10% higher than February, 20% higher than February. But we did see that kind of trend off in April, with about a 10% reduction from March, and then a 5% reduction then again in in May. So, that's pretty much it for what I can present to you as far as facts that we're seeing. If there's any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you. Councillor Petter?
Through the chair to Brian and Terry, actually. Just curious, how many electric vehicles do you have on the road?
So I'm not sure about Terry. I think he's running 100% gas. I have 4 hybrid vehicles of the 15 that we're running across the fleet. So my fleet's not all United. There are owner operators in the fleet. There's 6 of them that run their vehicles, which are all gas. So yeah, 4 of the 15 are hybrid.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion? Thank you, Mr. Raycraft. We'll be dealing with this later.
Thank you.
We'll go back to the 2022 Street Fest. We have a resolution. Councillor Talbot.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve in principle street closures for a 2022 downtown Woodstock BIA summer event, and further that staff be directed to work with the downtown Woodstock BIA to prepare the necessary street closure bylaw for July 14th, 2022 council meeting.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Accioni. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of that motion? Thank you. The next one is the Kendall Cab Company. There's no resolution required. It says this referred to the department report at item 14.F.3. And the same with Mr. Raycraft's United Woodstock Taxi. We'll be referring that to 14.F.3. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just through the chair, can we move up that report? Because it's the last item on the agenda, so they don't have to sit through the whole agenda.
Right. Is the council in favor of doing this? Yes, we can go ahead and do that. So I'll call the motion on that. Just a minute.
Move the motion.
Okay. Go ahead, Councilor.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve a $2 increase in fares for taxis as outlined in the report, and further that the necessary bylaw be prepared.
Councillor Talbot, second that motion. Councillor Tate.
And just a comment too is the insurance issue. I'm surprised that the taxi cabs didn't come sooner. There used to be a taxi cab program in the insurance world and it was canceled. And as they said, some cabs have to pay, they have to go through facility, which could be a minimum of like $10,000 a year just for insurance. So not only is the gas gone way up, but the insurance has increased greatly. And I know to switch to the electric vehicles, it's a large capital cost for the cab companies. I know in a perfect world, it'd be great they were all electric, but it's a financial burden for the cab companies. And
Thank you. Is there any other, Councillor Petter?
Yes, through the mayor. I don't think anybody on council wants to put this kind of an increase on to the general public, but obviously everyone's been to the pumps and they realize that in order to keep these guys viable and to keep this business there, that we have to have. I mean, it's mandatory that we have good cab service, and we do in town. So obviously I'm in favor of this, but don't be surprised someday if the gas goes down, we come back and want our money back.
Thank you. And any other discussion? I'll vote on that. All in favor of this increase? Thank you. That's unanimous.
Good afternoon, members of council. Planning staff are pleased to be here this afternoon to give you an update on the review and update of our official plan. So as council may be aware, we have been working on the OP update since about October of last year. The first phase was focused on updating the agricultural policies, and the engagement on this was primarily directed at our rural area municipalities. So as part of this next phase, we're going to be focusing on the environmental planning related matters in our official plan. And I'm going to talk just a little bit today about the update overall, some of the different topic areas that we're going to be considering, along with legislative context and implications, and provide a bit of an overview in terms of proposed project timing and next steps. So in terms of updating the official plan, it provides us with an opportunity to not only ensure that our planning documents and requirements are remaining up to date with both legislative and other policy changes, but it also provides an opportunity to continue to ensure that our official plan continues to provide and represent a local context. This is particularly important given that the official plan for Oxford County not only functions at a county-wide level, but it also functions as the lower tier official plan for each of the area municipalities. So as part of this update, we want to ensure that proposed policy changes not only meet the county-wide needs, but also meet the needs of our area municipalities as a whole. As part of this review, it also provides us an opportunity to look at the effectiveness of existing requirements in place, what's working well, and maybe where there's room for improvement. And while we think about improvement, it also provides us with an opportunity to look at ways to modernize our requirements and the processes that they support. So we're going to be focusing with this next phase on what I call the environmental policy requirements. And there's a number of topic areas for these, and I'm going to walk through each of these briefly through the next several slides. But first, just to sort of set things up a bit, in terms of legislation as part of this update, certainly the Planning Act and the requirements of the provincial policy statement under the Planning Act will be two key areas of focus for staff in terms of considerations of what the update should consider. But there's also an array of additional provincial guidance and other legislation that will also need to be considered as part of this next phase of the updates. And there's some examples of both on slide 5. So with respect to the first topic area being natural heritage is the planning term that refers to natural heritage features and areas. So these are things like woodlands, wetlands, wildlife habitats, meadows, valley lands, and watercourses. In order to help update our natural heritage system policies, we will be using a background study, and the county has an existing background study called the Natural Heritage System Study. It was last updated in 2016 based on 2015 aerial imagery. And one of the things that staff are currently pursuing is further updates of the existing inventory based on 2020 aerial. This helps staff understand changes that have occurred on the landscape. And this can include things like successional growth, so things like meadows that maybe are now after 5 years starting to look more like a woodland. But it also lets us understand changes in terms of removals that have happened on the landscape, whether they've been permitted or otherwise. The updates will also need to focus on incorporating more of a systems-based approach into the official plan, which will put greater emphasis on the need to recognize connectivity, linkages and corridors as part of the natural heritage system framework in the OP as a whole. We're going to be looking at other pieces of legislation, and this will include both provincial and federal legislation for the natural heritage updates. But there's also an array of additional areas and topics that staff could consider including policies, goals, or objectives for. This includes things like biodiversity, urban forestry, road ecology, bird-friendly development. There is a vast array of topics for this, and this is one of the areas where staff have been looking for early input, both from the area municipalities as well as from the public, to see if there are specific topic areas of interest that they would like to see staff focus on or conduct specific research to incorporate as we start to move forward with this next phase. We're also going to be looking at the open space policies. Open space is the planning term that speaks to parks, trails, and related uses that are largely recreational in nature. Open space policy updates are likely to first and foremost focus on any other changes that have occurred with respect to provincial requirements. But these updates also provide an opportunity for staff to consider and incorporate any newer local studies. So this includes things like park master plans, trails master planning, or other trail related studies that have been done, and consideration of how best to provide support to these other types of planning initiatives that have been undertaken by each of the area municipalities. Water resources is perhaps the one topic area that has seen the most change at the provincial level through the PPS. Municipalities are now required to plan for water resource systems. These systems are more broad and are intended to include sort of a wider range of water-related functions and uses. It includes establishing requirements for the protection of water quality and quantity in relation to both surface water, so rivers and streams, as well as groundwater features. We're also going to be looking at updates for stormwater management as part of the water resource review. And staff have already started to reach out to other staff at each of the area municipalities to discuss stormwater management approaches, in part to recognize the fact that stormwater management is something that is developed and implemented at the local level, and anything that we would like to propose in terms of changes for through the OP update needs to work for each of our area municipalities in terms of that service area. We're also going to be advancing some updates in relation to the source water protection plan requirements in the official plan. Staff anticipate this amendment will come forward in advance of the rest of the phase 2 work, and its scope is largely going to be focused on housekeeping to update the official plan policies that relate to source water protection to better align with the in-place requirements in each of the 4 source water protection plans that cover parts of Oxford County. There's existing policies that pertain to soils in the official plan now, and in terms of updates for these, staff anticipate that the bulk of the changes will first and foremost focus on the management of excess soils and the changes that the province has proposed and approved over the last several years. There is an additional lens recognized in the PPS that soil loss and degradation is also an area of concern with respect to the impacts of a change in climate. So that is another consideration that staff can propose some policy frameworks in relation to if it seems appropriate. So there's a number of different types of natural hazards established in the provincial policy statement. This includes things like karst topography, areas of steep slopes and erosion prone areas, but it also includes flooding. And with respect to flooding, one of the changes in PPS now puts emphasis that municipalities need to be preparing for the impacts of a changing climate and the risks associated with natural hazards as a result of that changing climate. So this is going to be one area for further discussion with the conservation authorities in terms of understanding existing flood mapping and existing flood risks and what changes may need to be proposed in terms of our official plan requirements. Overall, the review will be focusing on ensuring that the natural hazard policies contained in the official plan understand and recognize local flood risks, but meet all provincial minimum standards and requirements. We're also going to be introducing a new natural hazard called hazardous forest types. This is primarily focused on forest fire related risks where they are in proximity to development. The province has developed some guidance on this, and one of the first things staff is working on is completing some mapping and assessment to better understand where there may be high risk areas in the county and using that to inform initial policy directions. With respect to climate change, this is another area within the PPS that has seen some substantial revision. There's a range of topic areas that can be considered, and this is also anticipated to include further updates to renewable energy policies included in the official plan. These renewable energy policy updates are going to be focusing on settlement area related permissions and largely dealing with legislative updates since the repeal of the Green Energy Act. This is also another section, though, where staff are looking for early feedback, ideas, and input, again, from our area municipalities as well as from the public, with respect to other topic areas and areas of concern in terms of dealing or addressing, mitigating the impacts and considering adaptation measures in relation to climate change. And it's, again, to see if there's specific areas that they would like to see staff try to explore or further consider as we start to move forward with developing policy directions. So in terms of project timing overall, staff are currently working through a bit of a community visioning exercise. We do have a public survey available on speakupoxford.ca, and we are asking for the community to provide us with their ideas and input to help inform the overall project as we move forward. Following the month of June and the engagement that we're currently working through, staff anticipate largely taking the information and the feedback received back to help formulate and inform the development of a policy framework, directions, goals, as well as associated mapping. We're anticipating that this will be released within the first quarter of next year in terms of coming forward with the draft and policies, and all of the area municipalities will continue to be involved throughout the advancement of this project. Community engagement is targeted likely within the first half of next year, and this will need to be fairly comprehensive as we are not only going to be proposing policy or text-based changes, but there will be new mapping schedules coming forward as well. So staff have already identified the need for a fairly comprehensive engagement process necessary to help support all of the changes that are going to be brought forward. In terms of timing for the wrap up of the project, some of this is going to depend on how things advance. If overall, when we get to looking at revised policies in response to comments received on an initial draft, generally there is a level of satisfaction with how the project is proceeding, we may try to bring back an amendment for adoption with County Council before the end of next year. However, if there is a need for an additional engagement, whether that be at the area municipal level or with the broader community as a whole, staff are leaving some flexibility in the project so that we could accommodate additional engagement should it be identified or necessary as we move forward, in which case the project may extend into 2024. So I've already touched on a couple of the next steps. Staff have been meeting with some stakeholder groups. We were also at the Children's Water Festival that was last Saturday at Pittock Conservation Area. We have also given a presentation to the Woodstock EAC committee as part of the ongoing engagement that we're currently undertaking. And all of the feedback that we're currently receiving is going to help inform policy updates as we move forward. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions from council.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And before we go into a discussion, I'll ask for a motion on this report. Councillor Kate.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council direct staff to proceed with the subsequent phases of the official plan review process in accordance with the requirements under the Planning Act and is generally outlined in the report number CP 2022-48.
Councillor Accioni.
Thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Nix. Thank you for the presentation. I mean, I found that very informative. A lot of things I didn't know, truthfully. I'm just curious how Speak Up Oxford, how is that going with the survey? Are you getting a lot of or seeing a lot of interaction with the feedback on there?
So through the chair, compared to other projects that we've had, I'd say that the response is in line with those. That said, it is fairly low. But it is comparable to other projects. We've also had a number of other stakeholders and individuals reach out to staff directly, and that is certainly another way that they can engage, and staff are certainly happy to speak on the phone or attend other meetings if there's an interest. We've also been trying to proactively reach out to some of the other known environmental stakeholder groups to make them aware of the project as well. So we are trying to use other mechanisms and not solely rely on Speak Up Oxford, but it is a very easy way to answer 5 or 6 survey questions and give us your ideas within a couple of minutes, whether it's from your laptop, phone, or other device. So
I can continue. It certainly is, and I encourage a lot of people that come and ask me questions to look that up and simply encourage all of Oxford County to use it more and advertise. And the general public doesn't seem to know a lot of times they can do that there. So just for what it's worth, keep it up, but please advertise that so more people know. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, Councillor Schadenberg?
Yeah, thanks from the chair through to April. I guess my best question would be to sort of say that we've seen the provincial policy statement 2020 be recently updated fairly recently, and of course, More Homes for Everyone Act come into place as well. There seems to be a lot of changes very quickly, and I'm not necessarily sure the official plan is trying to keep up to it or can keep up to it because of the fact that a lot of these legislations seem to be pronounced more for higher population areas. But we got the agricultural side, the residential side, and of course, now you talked today about the heritage or the nature side of things. Do you think long-term you're going to have a continued relationship with the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority as far as designated floodplains and 200-year flood maps and stuff like that?
So through the chair, with respect to flood-related policies specifically, conservation authorities remain the designated or delegated authority by the province with respect to flood management, mapping, and hazard lands overall. And changes to the Conservation Authorities Act that have occurred over the past year to 2 have reaffirmed this. We will be, at the same time that we are looking at updating the official plan policies, we will also be doing a review with the conservation authorities with respect to what the province refers to as non-mandatory service areas. So plan review functions for things like EIS review that are beyond the regulatory authority of the conservation, beyond the authority of the UTRCA or other conservation authorities, is something that going forward, starting in 2024, would require a service agreement to be in place. So that is part of what is going to be an ongoing conversation, and there will be more information coming forward on that. Our director of planning is going to be leading that initiative at this point. So.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion? Thank you. Thank you. Call the vote on that. All in favor of the report? Thank you. That's unanimous. Call on the planner now. And the first application is B22-5-08 and B2208-8, B22-09 -8, application for consent, Stephen Claire Hartley. Could I have a motion on that application? Schadenberg.
Woodstock City Council advised the Land Division Committee that the city of Woodstock supports the proposal to sever the subject property subject to the following conditions. And there are 8 of them for B22-0508, and for B22-08-08, there are 8 conditions, and the same for B22-0908, there are 8 conditions.
Could I have a seconder on that, please? Bit more to that motion. It's okay. It's okay. Go ahead, Ms. Ann. Oh, a seconder, please. Councilor Petter. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first application for severance, actually, the first application today is for 3 severances. They're for residential severances, and they're what council likely refers to as the Hartley subdivision, located on the 11th line. And the applicant is proposing to create 3 lots out of what was the remnant parcel from the draft plan of subdivision that was completed back in 2012. And so the homestead for the original farm that was located on the Hartley farm was the retained parcel. And then the applicant is proposing these 3 residential lots. The applicant is also proposing to create or to construct 3 single detached dwellings, or a single detached dwelling on each lot. And then retain the original dwelling on the retained parcel. I gave a brief explanation on Monday night, but these lands were previously part of the agricultural reserve. They were brought into the city in around 2010. And at the time, an official plan amendment was completed. However, these lands were not redesignated, and we believe that it was a mapping error. And so based on that, we have referred to our policies in our interpretation section of the official plan. And because the long-term intent was always for these to be residential lots, we've interpreted that the lands are designated low-density residential. So based on that, we are of the opinion that the lots conform to the low-density residential policies in the official plan. We also feel that it's a good use of an underutilized site. It's considered to be good planning. And then also each of the lots are well in excess of what the minimum requirements are for the R1 zoning. And so we're satisfied that each parcel has adequate space for a single detached dwelling and then to maintain the appropriate setbacks. One other thing that I touched on Monday night was that there is an emergency access that will remain. And it's just based on the number of lots in the plan of subdivision. So there is an emergency access that would run from Tamarack to the 11th line, and that will remain. There's an easement back there, and then each of the landowners will be aware that they cannot construct anything for where the easement lies. And then the other question that came up was, would the owner of the retained lands be using the access to the 11th line? And that will not take place. And the applicant actually, as you can see, the retained lot has access to Hawthorne Place. And so that will continue. So in light of our review, we would recommend that these applications be given favorable consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions through to the planner on this application? Hearing none, I'll ask for a vote on that. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. The next application is B22-12-8 and A22-08-8, application for consent and minor variance. Alice Doreen Lowe's. Could I have a motion on that, please? Councillor Talbot and Councillor Achiume seconds that.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council advise the Land Division Committee that the city supports a proposal to sever subject property subject to the following 10 conditions. And further, that the city of Woodstock recommend approval for a minor variance application A22-028 submitted by Alice Doreen Lowe's for lands described as Part 1, 41R 7600 City of Woodstock, as it relates to its 1 condition as proposed variance is 4 conditions.
Thank you. And we have the seconder. Go ahead, Ms. Ashley.
Thank you. So this application for severance is for a rear yard infill lot, which is on Marshall Crescent. And the applicant is proposing, currently the parcel is vacant. It's a former road allowance that would have been an extension of Frederick Street. And then at the time, the Township of East Tavistock would have determined that they were not going to extend Frederick Street and therefore declared the parcel surplus, and they sold it to the current owner of the property. And so at this point in time, she's proposing to create a residential lot at the rear of the parcel and retain a residential lot up against Piddock Park Road. And she's proposing to construct a single detached dwelling on each parcel. Further to that, the applicant has also requested relief from the zoning bylaw to reduce the minimum lot frontage for each of the parcels. The application is proposing to reduce the rear yard infill lot from 15 15 meters to 6 meters. And then the retained parcel will be from 15 meters to 14 meters. And then just for council's information, an R1 standard lot, the minimum lot frontage is 12 meters. So that 14 meters is in excess of what would be the minimum requirement for lot frontage. And then we also spoke on Monday night about rear yard infill lots, and basically staff are satisfied with the minimum lot frontage being reduced to the 6 meters from the 15 meters based on the fact that the parcel does open up and allows for adequate space for a single detached dwelling, and then also to satisfy the requirements for the various setbacks and lot coverage and whatnot. And so then also that 6 meters is basically to ensure that a fire truck could get down that lane to the rear of the parcel. The application is consistent with the official plan policies. It's a form of low density residential development. It's also a form of infill and intensification. It's a good use of an underutilized site. And staff reviewed the application. They were satisfied with it. In light of the conversation that we had on Monday night, a neighboring property owner located at 25 Marshall, so this parcel, indicated that he had concerns with respect to drainage. He said that there is a drain that is an open drain that's located on this property, as well as a catch basin. So the city development engineer, as well as the chief building official, went out and double checked it. And they've asked that an additional condition be included to ensure that the grading and drainage is done to their satisfaction. And so we've included that condition, and it's been included on the agenda today. So in light of our review and the amended conditions, we recommend that this application also get favorable consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Schadenberg?
Yeah, thanks to the mayor. I guess it may be just more of a comment that I'd want to thank from the engineering office, Filippo D'Amelio, and from the building office, Craig Wallace, for, because we just said our Monday was a planning meeting to just be able to turn around quickly and by Thursday afternoon have an answer or response. And even though it's added a condition to the severance or the two building lots here, that they were able to go out as quickly as they did to be able to answer questions. So we're not waiting for 2 more weeks, say, to the next council meeting. So I just want to make that statement.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? One thing I would like to say is I'd like to thank the gentleman, the neighbor that came forward and brought that to our attention at the planning meeting. So thank you to him. So call the vote on that. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. The next application is B 22-18-8. A22-03-3, application for consent and minor variance 2731827 Ontario Inc. Could I have a motion on that, please? Councillor Petter.
Yeah, I move that Woodstock City Council advise the Land Division Committee that the city supports the proposal to sever the subject property subject to the following conditions, of which there are 8. Yes, there are 8. And further, that the city of Woodstock recommend approval of minor variance application A22-03-8 submitted by 2731827 Ontario Inc. for lands described as part lot 18, plan 1654, part 141R 3846, part 141R 4438, and part 141R 6714. City of Woodstock as it relates to relief from section 17.2, table 17.2 zone provisions to reduce the minimum lot frontage for the severed lot resulting from consent file B2218-8 from 60 meters to 49 meters. As the proposed variance is, and there's 4 of those.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder on that, please? Councillor Accioni. Go ahead, Ms. Ashler.
Thank you. So this application for severance and minor variance is to create a vacant industrial parcel and retain an industrial parcel. The retained parcel contains an existing industrial business. and was designed, I can scroll down here to the site plan. It was designed to with the future thought of severing these lands. Further to that, this severed lot will be merged with the parcel to the east and the parcel to the south, which will give it frontage onto Ridgeway Road. The city sold this parcel a number of years ago, and it was the understanding that the parcel would be consolidated. And it hasn't, to our knowledge, it hasn't been consolidated yet. So we did include a condition to ensure that the parcel would not be landlocked if this application is approved. And so we're satisfied that can take place. Based on that, the applicant has also requested the minor variance, and the minor variance is to reduce the minimum lot frontage from 60 meters to 49.6 meters. And that's simply because the parcel, it was part of what was proposed to, what was a former road allowance, but the city determined that it was surplus and could be sold to this property owner. But that is what qualifies as their frontage. And so although it's a reduction in the frontage, staff are satisfied that there is still adequate space to get into the parcel, to have two-way traffic into the parcel, and then it opens up into a much larger parcel. I should also inform council of the size of each parcel. So the parcel to be severed is approximately 9 acres, and then the retained parcel is 5.9 acres, so approximately 6. And so each parcel is quite large. This will allow for future development of the lot to be severed, which is in keeping with the provincial policy statement, and will support economic development in the area as well. The subject lands are designated business park, and this also complies with the intent, the long-term intent of the area with respect to the business park policies. And then the subject lands are zoned M1, and staff are satisfied that each of the parcels are adequately sized to accommodate uses that are contemplated by the M1 zone. The applications were circulated to various agencies. The comments that were received include a number of conditions, and those conditions are generally standard conditions, in addition to the condition that I indicated that we would be requiring the applicant to merge the parcels to ensure that they're not creating a landlocked parcel. So in light of that, we'd recommend that this application be approved.
Is there any questions or discussion on that application? Hearing none, I'll call vote on that. All in favor? Thank you. That's passed unanimously. The next one is ZN 8-22-01 and ZN 8-22-02, application for zone change, removal of holding provision, Mel Woodstock 1 Inc. and Mel Woodstock 2 Inc. Could I have a motion on that, please? Councillor Talbot and seconder, Councillor Accioni. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Ashley.
Thank you. So this application for zone change is a little bit different than our normal zone changes. This application is simply just to remove the holding provision on the subject properties. In this case, what we're referring to with respect to the subject property is actually, in fact, 2 properties. They're under separate ownership, but they are held by the same owner under this. Yeah, the ownership is held by the same owner. So what we've done is we've combined the 2 applications as a single application for council to deal with. The holding provision was originally imposed for both parcels, which at the time was a single parcel. So the holding provision that is in place is for 3 separate reasons. The one was to require an archaeological assessment be completed. The second was to ensure that the property could be serviced by municipal sanitary and water, and that the applicant enter into an agreement to ensure that each of the properties would be serviced by municipal services. And then the third requirement is that staff be satisfied that a setback from the adjacent woodlot would be maintained. And I believe that the setbacks required is 7.5 meters. And so at this point in time, the applicant has demonstrated that each of these requirements have been addressed. An archaeological assessment has been filed. It was, just for council's interest, it was determined that there were a number of artifacts and they were related to the farmstead that was originally on the property. However, because of years of cultivation of the site, they no longer feel that there's any sort of cultural heritage value left to the site. And so because of that, the assessment is complete and it was filed with the Ministry of Culture. And then with respect to the servicing, it was believed by staff that this condition was required at the time because servicing was not available in this area. Since then, servicing has become available, and the applicant is currently going through site plans. So although they don't have an agreement in place to connect to services, staff are satisfied through the site plan agreement that they will be required to connect to the services that are available. So staff are satisfied also that provision can be cleared. And then the third one was with respect to the setback, and the requirement was 7.5 meters. And based on the proposed site plans, the applicant is proposing about a 10-meter setback. So we're also satisfied that that provision can be cleared as well. And then just for additional safety measures, as I said, this application is currently going through site plans. So any of these other outstanding issues, if there were any that we had concerns about, we're satisfied that we can address them through the site plan approval process and the site plan agreement. So based on our evaluation of this, we would recommend that the holding provision be lifted.
Thank you. Are there any questions through to Ms. Ashler? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ashler, for all of that. So our next is the John Bursaville, sorry, Terry Fox Run request for an in-kind service donation. Could I have a motion? Councillor Petter.
I move that Woodstock City Council approve the in-kind donation subject to availability and sign request subject to staff approval from the Lions Club of Woodstock for the Terry Fox Run to be held on September 18th, 2022.
Seconder on that, please. Councillor Tate. Any discussion? Councillor Petter.
Through the chair, I just want to congratulate John Brissell. John and I go back over a half a century. Jerry, you know how long that is? And anyway, he does so much work for the Terry Fox Run. I think it's phenomenal. He just keeps at it, and congratulations, John. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Yes, thank you, John, for all the work that you do. And I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. And the next is a Basil Akroam, Asset Management Analyst. They have a motion on that. Oh, there's no motion. It's not required right here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Basil Groom, the Asset Management Analyst at the city. Today, I'm just going to briefly go over the City of Woodstock's asset management plan, some of the core content available within this report. So kind of a quick overview of asset management. It's essentially the coordinated activity of an organization to help realize value of the assets it owns, as well as it's the city's integrated business approach with an aim to minimize life cycle costs of owning, operating, maintaining assets at an acceptable level of risk, while also continuously delivering established levels of service for present and future customers. What this means really is that asset management as a whole helps the city make the best possible investment decisions for their infrastructure needs, while also bringing consistency and standardization. The purpose of asset management, as the asset management plan, is to help municipalities strategize their financial planning as to manage fluctuations within the budget and minimize overall risk while ensuring that levels of service do not suffer. Asset management should be the driving force in capital budget planning, as well as being an effective and meaningful long-term policy. So kind of what brought us here, OREG 58817. So in December of 2017, the Ontario provincial government laid out requirements for scope and content for a municipal asset management plan. Regulatory compliance of this plan dictates the success of any application for any conditional grant for municipal infrastructure projects. This regulation places substantial emphasis on current and proposed levels of service and life cycle costs incurred in delivering them. In other words, they want to see where the money is being spent and that it's ensured that it's being spent effectively. It is intended to improve the quality and consistency of municipal asset management planning. So then in March of 2021, the province introduced OREG 19321, amending OREG 58817 by extending each key date of the phase-in schedule by 1 year. This was made in response to many municipalities who requested additional time as they navigated the various challenges and uncertainties during the COVID-19 pandemic. So kind of diving into the regulation timeline, it began with a strategic asset management policy that kind of laid out the line of sight and scope of the asset management program, which was due July 1st, 2019. And then July 1st of 2022, an asset management plan for the core assets of each municipality with current levels of service is due. And then July 1st of 2024, an updated asset management plan for core and now including non-core assets with current levels of service. And then July 1st of 2025, an asset management policy update, as well as introducing proposed levels of service for the core and non-core assets. And then for the future 2025 and on, the review and update of the asset management plan for at least every 5 years. So kind of diving into Woodstock's timeline. So in 2019, the strategic asset management policy was approved by council. That kind of laid the foundation and strategic plan moving forward for the city. And then between 2020 and 2022, the asset management plan was brought in-house. So previously in 2013 and 2017, it was outsourced to a consultant. And now we've begun developing the program in-house to kind of keep it internal. And then in 2022, we're moving forward towards council approval of the core assets. And then the next steps are identifying the levels of service for non-core assets, as well as maintaining annual status updates. So kind of a quick overview of the city's asset portfolio, which can also be found on page 32 of the report, section 4. Currently, the city owns and operates the total replacement cost of $583 million as of December 31st of 2021. The road network makes up roughly about 50% of that portfolio, coming in at roughly $276 million. The next biggest asset would be the buildings and facilities at 25% at $147 million. And within the remaining asset classes, making up the remaining 25% at $158 million. So diving into the core classes, section 4.2 on page 34 of the report talks more in detail about the road network. But like I mentioned, total replacement cost is $276 million. The average condition rating of the road network is at a 61%, which would be considered a good rating. And then roughly 8% or $20.5 million in assets within the road network have an estimated useful life of less than 5 years. So what that means within the next 5 years, they will either need rehab or replacement. So then our bridges and culverts come in at $9.5 million replacement costs with an average bridge condition index at 73.57, which is considered good. And then 3% of the bridges and culverts, roughly $300,000 within have an estimated useful life of less than 5 years. So this wouldn't necessarily mean an entire bridge would need to be replaced, but things like such as the bridge joints and bridge decks. And then the stormwater network comes in at 72.7 million replacement cost, which is with a rating of 65%, which again would be considered good. Roughly 6.5% of the assets, or about $4.7 million within the stormwater network, have an estimated useful life of less than 5 years. So then section 5 or page 69 on the report discusses the financial strategy for the city to ensure that the right funds are available to maintain our current levels of service. Our annual capital requirement is $21.5 million, which means this is what we need to maintain our assets at their current level of service. Currently, the estimated infrastructure gap is 10.6 million, which means between what we need and what we have, we're having a gap of 10.6 million. That means that there will be assets that we aren't able to maintain moving forward at their current level of service. So where the regulation comes in is if we don't address that gap, it will snowball, and then the overall condition of the infrastructure of the city will degrade over time. So roughly 11% of assets within the city have an estimated useful life of less than 5 years, which are valued at $61 million. So kind of the biggest driving point with asset management is the cost versus condition argument. When do we do the right treatment at the right time? This graph just illustrates as an example of road condition, where if the right treatment is not done at the right time, as an example, where it's listed as $1, which might be crack sealing, the risk of the overall condition dropping is significant. If you ignore this $1 treatment, for example, within a few years, the estimated useful life of that asset drops significantly, and now you're paying 2, 3, or 4 times as much to replace it when the right treatment could have extended that useful life. Kind of a small example that I'd give is if you've got, say, for instance, like a fire truck worth at say 600,000. If you do no maintenance at all over 10 years of useful life, it's going to cost you about 60,000 a year. And if you include, say, an engine replacement as a maintenance activity at value, say, at 20,000, this extends the useful life by 5 years. And now over the course of 15 years, your cost of that asset is now 41,000. So this same logic kind of applies across the board for all assets. So this chart right here represents the city's anticipated annual capital requirements based on actual assets that have an end of life within the next 10 years. Ensuring that the right projects are done at the right time will help the city navigate the next 10 years in capital requirements, i.e. the best return on investment. So kind of moving forward, what the city needs to do is we need to identify the current levels of service for our non-core assets, such as the buildings and facilities, machinery and equipment, land improvements and vehicles using data no earlier than 2021, 2022. And then an internal master level service framework will need to be refined, and we'll need the support and input of all departments as we develop the asset management program moving forward and continue to update the plan. Communication is integral to a successful asset and risk management plan, as well as a master risk framework will also be developed to ensure that the city has efficient investment into its assets maintenance and operation, as well as the rehabilitation and reconstruction phases. So the asset management plan must be considered and incorporated and not to be used in isolation from capital budget planning. We should be integrating asset management into all planning stages and long-term budget processing. It is a live document, so it is an evolving document. What that means is essentially it's not going to be put on the shelf and that's it. We will continually be updating it. So as we move forward, we will need the support of all departments and city staff. And essentially that asset management will help guide what maintenance activities can be performed, what assets can be rehabilitated or replaced, and where we can direct money in order to not have drops in levels of service. Driving point is that the asset management plan should be driving the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there, Councillor Schadenberg?
Yeah, thanks from our chair through the asset management engineering office. I guess one question would be is when you take a look, say, of a single house, and you take an appraisal of a house, you can take the effective age versus the actual age of the house and try to make a calculation as to what its market value might be. One of the numbers that you showed me as a percentage, though, was that the stormwater network for the city of Woodstock, 65% of it was deemed to be good. So I'm just kind of curious between engineering and math and age and effective age and appraisal and all that stuff, where a number like that would somewhat be calculated. Did you have a third party inspector check out some of the work, or basically how's the number derived at?
So through the chair, so a lot of our core assets have consultants that do condition ratings for us. So we get those condition ratings and we incorporate them into our plan. And then they're uploaded into a software that kind of outputs, tells us, letting us know what the future condition will be. So that condition rating is based, or that 65% is based on a consultant's condition rating, as well as age-based. So the kind of the key is that we want to move away from using age-based condition ratings for assets and move towards assessed, because that'll give us a more accurate representation of what we actually have.
I know one of the factors when we start talking about debt municipal wise is also to look at what we own. And as you sort of said, what we own is a huge amount of the 583 or 583 million or something. That's very impressive. So to be able to do a calculation against that is nice to be able to figure out when it comes to figure out the replacement costs of things like roads.
Any other, Councillor Accioni?
Yes, through the chair, it's just more of a general statement that I found this report absolutely fascinating. The amount of detail that must have gone into this by the people that worked on it and put it all together is phenomenal. So I just want to say thank you to them all, and going forward as a council, something like this report is so great to have, to know what kind of big budget things you got coming forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you for your presentation. We have no mayor's report, no councillors' reports, and no the department reports, administrative services. Councillor Tate.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council receive the statement of revenue and expenditure and the statement of capital expenditures for the period ending May 31st, 2022 as information.
Thank you. The chair through to Mrs. Campbell. I'm looking at the statement. I'm thinking it's looking pretty good that we have received as much revenue as we have so far at the halfway mark. We're past our halfway point in it. Are you pleased with it, or do you have any concerns?
Through acting mayor Lauder to the taxes at the moment are not shared, so the $51 million is not all of ours. We only share them after the final billing is done, and we're doing that at the moment. But with respect to concerns, I have no concerns. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. And the next one is engineering and the City of Woodstock 2022 Asset Management Plan. Councillor Schadenberg.
The Woodstock City Council approved the proposed asset management plan attached as Appendix A, and further that the asset management plan be posted on the city's website to comply with Ontario Regulation 588-/17.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder on that, please? Councillor Tate. Are there any questions or comments on the proposal that we just listened to? Councillor Tate.
Just a comment that I want to welcome Basil to the City of Woodstock, because this is the first time council has actually met him because of COVID. So welcome.
Just one thing I'd like to add is I'm looking forward to when the full asset management plan is completed, including all the facilities in the city, because we've done so much work on things like the Market Center building behind us and the library and the museum, and upgrading, of course, the city hall that we're in, and so many of the great facilities that we've got in the city of Woodstock, again, when it comes to what their state of repair is. And we know how much work we've spent on those facilities as far as buildings go.
Yes. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? Thank you. Parks and Recreation, the City of Woodstock Policy PR 011, City Beautiful Awards. Could I have the motion on this, please? Counselor Accioni, and seconder, please. Counselor Schadenberg.
Yes,
Go
moved by myself, that Woodstock City Council approve amendment to policy PR 011 City Beautiful Awards.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? No, I think this is great that this is coming forward because been having calls on it and wanting to know if we're going to proceed with it. So did Rita, did you want to speak to this at all?
Sure, I can speak to that through the chair. So Rita Horan, City of Woodstock Parks Department. I take care of forestry in all of the parks, and I usually am part of the committee for the City Beautiful Awards. Panel of judges historically has gone and taken nominations from the public and judged the gardens, and we offer recognition to those that really take the effort to make our city more beautiful. So coming out of COVID, we want to revive this program and get a lot of community involvement. So we're looking at other ways that we can be accepting nominations. So through our social media platforms this year, you'll find different ways that you can nominate your neighbors or businesses or people in the public that you think have gone above and beyond to help make our city beautiful. And we're also going to be putting out a lot of media and information about that in the coming weeks. So keep a look on that. And then hoping to have a celebration where we can give recognition to those people in the end of this summer.
Thank you. Are there any questions through to Rita or any discussion? Thank you, Rita. Call the vote on that. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. The next economic development request to hire a downtown development officer as a full-time permanent staff position. Could I have the motion on that, please? Councillor Talbot.
Sorry. Just lost it for a minute. I'll move that Woodstock City Council approve the hiring of a downtown development officer as a full-time permanent city staff position.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder on that, please? Councillor Accioni. Is there any discussion on that? Councillor Schadenberg.
I guess my mayor through to Brad Hammond from the development officer, maybe give us a specific look at the so-called resume you might be expecting from somebody to be able to undertake this case, because we've had so many contacts and about Renew downtown Woodstock to be able to go forward with this position.
Your worship, through to the question. Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one to answer at this point, because when you do advertise, you get a variety of resumes and sometimes some surprises. I think, generally we're looking for someone with a lot of energy. It's a big job and there's a lot of work to be done over the next number of years. We're looking for someone that's passionate about the downtown and issues associated with the downtown. Certainly someone that can build relationships and bring people together. The issues that exist in the downtown and the work that we're planning on over the next number of years is going to involve a team of people from within the city, within the county, and so forth, many people. So, certainly a team builder, those would be a few of the kind of skill sets I think that we'd be looking for.
The next is the Clerk's Municipal Code Chapter 402 Award of Excellence. Could I have the motion on that, please? Councillor Patter.
I move that Woodstock City Council confirm the selection of Curtis Ball, Justin Martins, and Prancy Patel as the winners of the 2022 Student Civic Award of Excellence, and further that account 0204-83749 and a bunch of zeros Student Civic Award of Excellence be increased by $2,000 in order to award these three Student Civic Awards of Excellence for 2022, and further that the funds be drawn from account 1200-711-0348, Council Publicity and Promotion.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder on that? Councillor Accioni. Is there any discussion? Councillor Accioni.
Just more of a statement on all three of the students reading their resumes was just absolutely incredible and so impressive and inspired for some of the youth. So to keep them up and wish them well as they move forward, and hope to see them back in the city of Woodstock after they're done school.
Thank you. Yes, and we do budget for 1,000 of these awards, but we've chosen, and I'm glad that our treasurer was able to find another 2,000 to give to all three, because like Councillor Accioni is saying, these people, these three students really do deserve this. So thank you. I'll call the motion. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. And the next one, 2022 pre-election accessibility report. Motion, Councillor Schadenberg.
Now Woodstock City Council received the 2022 pre-election accessibility plan as information.
Thank you. Could I have Councillor Tate? Is there any discussion? Question, Councillor Schadenberg?
I'm a member of the Accessibility Advisory Committee for the city, and we did look over this report at our last meeting, but maybe I can ask the city clerk, Amy Humphries, just to give us a bit of a background as to some of the things that are included in the accessibility of the 5 voting stations in the city of Woodstock.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Lauder. Through to Councillor Schadenberg. I will acknowledge our deputy clerk is here and she participated in this report as well. Ultimately, what we look for when we look at voting locations is the accessibility of the physical building in that particular case. So we're looking to make sure there's accessible parking, there's ramps into the building. If there are stairs, elevators would be available to those who need it. We also include other pieces in the actual accessibility planning of the election, things, as minor as making sure we have chairs in the hallway if there's lineups. But also as council approved, if you'll recall at the last council meeting, we're going to have free transit on October 24th. So I think that helps with the accessibility piece as well. So there's certainly the piece about the buildings, as you've mentioned, and what we look for in the physical building, but there's many other things we take into account. So for example, we'll have an accessible tabulator at our advanced polls, as well as the Goff Hall poll. So that can provide assistance to those with visual disabilities and such. So many aspects that go into this. And then what we do is after the election, we report back on any barriers that we identified and how we plan to address those moving forward in future elections.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions or discussion? If not, I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. And we've dealt with the taxi fares and special committees. We don't have anything. No notice of motion, no new business, and draft bylaws. Councillor Tate.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Petter, that the following bylaws be given the first and second reading. 9538-22, a bylaw to establish development charges for the corporation of the city of Woodstock, and 9539-22, a bylaw to amend the zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? Thank you. And then the third reading, Councillor Tate.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Petter, that the following bylaws be given third and final reading. 9538-22, 9539-22.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? Thank you. And questions and addresses. Councillor Accioni, I'll start on your side.
Well, thank you very much. Wasn't ready for that. Of course, as a father, a proud father, I want to remind everyone this Sunday is Father's Day. Going to be at Dad Fest on Sunday, which is going to be at Movement Church, car show and a whole bunch of fun activities. If anybody wants to head by there, it should be fun. I've been there a few times over the years. Geez, I'm not used to starting. I get to say everything. No. Canada Day, I guess, is coming up. Unfortunately, this will be the first one I miss, I think, in my adult life here. So I will be there in spirit. It's always a great time and wish everybody well. And stay tuned to what's on Woodstock Magazine for anything that's upcoming here in the city. And thank you. I'll leave some for everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Talbot.
I didn't want to tell him that we started on this side of the room last time, but he wasn't here. Anyways, all I've got to say is with the beautiful temperatures that we're experiencing today, Tuesday, the 21st is the summer solstice and will be the first day of summer. So I was just looking at the projected temperature. It's going to be 32. So this is what we've been waiting for. But I was in one of the shops today and one of the customers told me when we were discussing the weather, said there's only 2 seasons, construction and winter. So there you go. So, but there's also summer. So the kids will be getting out of school shortly and we need to be aware of that so that they'll be out playing and, but just enjoy the beautiful temperatures and we'll see you in a month.
Thank you. Councillor Petter.
I just want to thank my cab driver who got me here in time for council. Tom was his name. And luckily it was before the price increase. What? I would have had to pay $2 more, no, $4 more. No, that's okay. He's not actually a cab driver, but I said I'd mention his name, Tom, with a J at the last name. I don't have anything else except happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, of which I'm one, and I better be a good Father's Day. I've got like a barbecue, maybe a car, something, I don't know. Anyway, have fun. Goodbye.
Thank you. Councillor Schadenberg. Can you beat that?
Want me to be fast, really quick?
No, I said, can you beat that?
Oh, can I beat that? I think you want me to be fast. I want to congratulate Brad Kovacic of the city of Woodstock. He first became a linesman in the NHL back in 1996. So if you do your math, it's 25 years plus. He's 25 seasons. He's been a referee in the NHL. He's been named to be a linesman again this time for the Stanley Cup Finals. So I think there's 5 linesmen and 5 referees get named. And he did not do last night's game, so keep an eye out for him and the rest of the Stanley Cup Finals. The other thing I want to mention is on Saturday, July the 16th, we do have a meeting before then, but it'll just be a couple of days before then. It's art in Victoria Park, and the deadline to register if you want to be an artist in that event is June 22nd now at 4 p.m. They've extended the extension date for that to register, but Saturday, July 16th, write that on your calendar, and Victoria Park is going to be the place to be in the city of Woodstock.
Thank you. Councillor Tate.
Just want to remind everybody, and especially the councillors that aren't on county council, the vote on the water is June 22nd at 7 o'clock in county council chambers. So everybody should be there and tell all your friends and family to show up. We don't know what the recommendation will be, but certainly we do not want the county to take our water over. And then lastly, I'm going to let Councillor Lauder use up the rest of my time. Councillor Lauder went to a really good seminar online the other day. She was telling me about, and we've had a lot of flack on issues with a certain member of council and how our hands are tied with the Municipal Act. And the seminar that Councillor Lauder went to, there may be something that helps us going forward that a MPP has brought forth. So I'll let her comment on it.
Thank you. As Councillor Tate mentioned, Tuesday evening, I attended Women in Leadership webinar. The guest speaker was MPP Stephen Blias. Prior to being elected MPP in a by-election in 2020, he sat on Ottawa City Council. And during the time serving as MPP in that since February 2020, he proposed a private member's bill stopping harassment and abuse by local leaders act. The bill received second reading by unanimous vote, but due to the election, the bill died. When the Legislative Assembly reconvenes, he will be bringing the bill to the floor again. This was an act to amend various statutes with respect to the workplace violence and harassment policies and codes of conduct, and if charged, would be 8 years before the person could run for office again. He is requesting this become enshrined in the Ontario Municipal Act, and if successful, this would allow councils to dismiss a person who has had these charges against them. And this was a very enlightening presentation that he presented to the ladies and the people on this in this Women's in Leadership webinar were people from around in southwestern Ontario, from Strathroy. There were wardens, there was mayors and councillors, and so it was very interesting. And there's lots of children's programs available for the summer. Please check out your website and the What's on Woodstock information. There's something there for everyone, I think. And Canada Day celebrations are back with lots of entertainment lined up for the day, commencing at 2 p.m., closing off with a spectacular fireworks display at dusk. I want to thank Toyota for their continuing sponsorship of these fireworks. And I just want to wish all the fathers out there a very happy Father's Day. And thank you. And I'll call for an adjournment. Thank you, Councillor Petter, and second by Councillor Schadenberg. All in favor? Thank you. Have a good day.